Okay. Just to introduce myself, I have around 2 decades of experience in the tech field with a diverse background in software engineering, data analytics, ML, and AI, in various sectors, including financial services, insurance, manufacturing, healthcare, representing companies like Bank of America, ODP Corporation, Medtronic, and Wipro. So, without further ado, we'll start. The first disclaimer, I'm representing myself. I'm not representing my employer. The views or opinions expressed here are my own, not by my employers, okay? What we're going to discuss is a couple of these items, like, in the context of AI and ML, what is Gen AI, emerging trends, challenges, and also data security and privacy. We'll talk about that Samsung data leak, what it is, and also regulations and the recent executive order floated by White House, so all of those things. The first thing, what is Gen AI? I mean, I don't have to define it. Everyone knows it. New content based on the old content. Language model, it's just a stitching of the words. I just treat it like that. It's as simple as that. In the context of AI, ML, and deep learning, it falls in the circle of deep learning, basically. So both Gen AI and LLMs fall under that. Now, what do ML models do? They do predictions, they do classification, and they do clustering. Whereas Gen AI, it generates new content, like new images, code generation, text generation. So if you see the fourth quadrant here, you have different categories. So text generation, code generation, image generation, video, things like that. So that's the difference between what is ML and what is Gen AI. Moving on, so how to build a domain-specific model? I'll talk about this in terms of the financial services. Anyone here from Bloomberg? No? Morgan Stanley? No? Okay, good. So the first one is, you've seen Bloomberg GPT, how they built it. Like, if you have to build it in-house, do I need like 100 software engineers? Like, it's a big team. No, Bloomberg built it with just nine people. Like, out of those 4 to 5 are engineers, the rest of them are like project managers, product managers, like that. Now, do I need a lot of hardware? Like, like what kind of hardware do you need? So they just built it on around 500 A100s, and they rented them. They disclosed it as 1.3 million GPU hours, and you can estimate the cost based on how much time it took. They took like 53 days of training it involved, and then they use Amazon SageMaker. It's pretty much built on PyTorch. They took an open source model like Bloom and then started improvising on top of it. So they created this curated FinPile data set, so which is like 50% of the data, and then mixed it with whatever the existing data that they have accumulated, and then ingested into Bloom, and then created this Bloomberg GPT. So the use cases are nothing but summarization, named entity recognition, question answering, sentiment analysis. Those are the use cases. Now, look, is it accurate enough? What is the accuracy scoring? You can see that on the last quadrant. It's fairly okay when compared to other open source models. But the question is it in production? It's not yet in production. They're still in like kind of extending it to the internal code base, still in experimentation phase. Now, what about buy? So Morgan Stanley, they came up with this AI at Morgan Stanley assistant, right? This is based on the partnership with OpenAI. So OpenAI's enterprise tier provides certain guardrails in terms of this data that either customer prompts or the training data and all of that. So what they did was they created this 100,000 research reports, and then they ingested into that custom model, and then they started using it as of, they have said like all the research analysts are trying to use it, but I don't know how far they are into that in productionizing this, but this is based on the partnership with OpenAI's enterprise tier. So they can train it with their own data, with whatever the guardrails they're providing. So this is more on the buy side. So what do they do? What kind of business use cases? They can ask like, what is the outlook of the Fed rate hike? How do I open an IRA for a client, and things like that. So primarily, a research analyst can focus more on focus on the customer base rather than focusing on administrative or research tasks. Emerging trends in LLM ecosystem. So anyone knows, like, what is the second most popular chatbot apart from ChatGPT? Third most popular? No? Okay. Second, I mean, based on this report, character AI comes out second, bot comes out third, Poe comes out fourth. So you can see that, like, how much of a difference. In terms of billions of monthly visits, ChatGPT takes off, like, way beyond 15 billion. So every other chatbot falls like below 0.5. When you compare it to the mainstream WhatsApp and Facebook, you can see that, like, it's very pale in comparison to WhatsApp. So it's around 60, 70 billion, and whereas this is still at way less. So, the last quadrant, if you see, the most of the use cases are used for content generation, text generation. Primarily, it's used for an assistant, like in a chatbot or any innovative content generation. Hype cycle. We are on the top of the cusp. Like this, Gen AI is on the top. Is it going to fall from that cliff? We have to wait and see. You might have seen this already. I'm going to talk about the top three. I mean, you might have seen the trends, like starting from prompts and prompt engineering and all of that stuff. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm not going to talk about the first 5. The latest trends are with 6, 7, and 8. One is retrieval-augmented generation, autonomous agents, and then soft prompts. So this is the emerging trend in terms of the LLM architecture. So we're going to talk about retrieval-augmented generation. This one, if you see that, it's more like a difference between open book and closed book exam. So what happens is, I'll take an example, like, in NFL, if you see Tom Brady, if you give a prompt, rewind back 2 months, and then give that prompt, which NFL team Tom Brady is playing for, then it will say, oh, as of September 21st, 2021, he's playing for Tampa Bay. Whereas if you rewind forward now, ChatGPT has this web search capability where it goes and gets that relevant information and gives it to you. How does it do that? How does it do it? Like, based on this RAG. Part of it. They haven't disclosed it, but this is how it should happen. Like, if you see, the context for this new content, which is not there, is given to the database called a vector database. And then this context is in the form of embeddings. Embeddings are nothing but high-dimensional metrics. So once it takes that information, well, while you give the prompt saying for which team Tom Brady is playing for, so it goes into that vector database and tries to retrieve that information and then sends it to the prompt along with the question where it says for which team Tom Brady is playing for. So now the answer comes out as, oh, he's currently retired. So that's how you can use RAG. The next one is autonomous agents. The autonomous agents, if you can see, there are various frameworks that came out recently. ChatGPT has a lot of plugins. Hugging Face came out with this Hugging Face Hugging GPT framework where they have around 400 AI models. You can use these expert models for different tasks. If you see in this second quadrant where they show a picture and they say, can you generate a caption and then classify, like, what animals are there, how many animals are there. So first thing is, it divides the task into 3 different expert models. Like, one is object detection, object classification, and then obviously in terms of counting how many objects are there as well. So, and then you get the caption saying that, oh, these are like how many giraffes are there, how many zebras are there, and things like that. A herd of giraffes and zebras. So that's how this autonomous agent framework works in Hugging Face. And if you see LangChain, a similar framework, you have different agents, and then you have different LLMs. You can integrate them and then try to ingest this expert model architecture into that. So the fourth quadrant is agent-to-agent communications, where human involvement is pretty minimal, and then they communicate with each other. If you take it to the next level, so this is one of the studies conducted by both Stanford and Google. They have introduced a virtual village, and they have ingested some 25 AI agents into that. And then it's more like a human-like behavior. They talk about elections. They talk about Valentine's Day. If, as a person, as a human, if a person is ingested into this virtual village, you may not know, oh, which one is the bot, which one is the real human. So they have their own daily routine, like morning routines and all of that. So it's almost like just like a human. So that's how these autonomous agents are like evolving as we are speaking. We would see more in these terms. The next one is prompt tuning or soft prompts. Everyone knows about the hard prompts, where we kind of engineered the prompts, we in the sense that users, whereas the soft prompts are something like an embedding. So in this study, what they have done was they've taken this 11 billion parameter model and then distilled it to like 20K parameters and then tried to ingest these. If you see this, task A has A1, A2, A3, those are the prompts. So they ingested into that distilled model and then generated these soft prompts called embeddings. And then when they send it to the model, they send these embeddings into the model. So they don't have to fine-tune this for those tasks. So what happens in that case is you are actually trying to save the costs associated with that fine-tuning. And if you see the accuracy scoring, that green line, if you see, for less number of parameters, you can see the accuracy going up. That is also coming up as one of the emerging trends in the LLM architecture. This is the emerging tech stack. I mean, there are so many language models, and then you can see all the way from foundation models to the observability stack. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but you can see how each of these LLMs and then the tech space has kind of evolved and mushroomed itself. The next one is emerging challenges. If you see, there's a perception gap. Everyone is saying, okay, it's going to become artificial general intelligence. It's going to replace the humans. I mean, this is kind of obviously overhyped. You're not seeing it anywhere close to that. The second aspect is data security and privacy. I have some slides will talk about that, encryption of data in use and also adversarial attacks. The hallucination factor. You can kind of not eliminate hallucination factor, but at the same time, you can control it. Some methods like RAG and all of that. So why is this hallucination occurring? In the sense, it's not trained on enough data. It's not trained, there is not enough context, enough constraints, but we cannot eliminate it. It still stays there. Toxicity. We're going to talk about this RLAF. So reinforced learning through human feedback, that was the case with OpenAI, whereas reinforced learning with artificial intelligence feedback is something Anthropic came up in its Claude 2. So we're going to talk about that as well. The other aspect is AI cannibalism. So starting last year till now, there was a lot of AI content generated, a lot of AI books, a lot of AI code was generated. So moving forward, if you see ChatGPT version 5, version 6, they're going to be trained on the content it originally generated, starting last year till now and moving forward. So what happens is it kind of a feedback loop. It trains itself on the data which it generated in the past. So as a result, the quality of the output would go down because it's not something new content that is getting generated. Now, let's talk about hype versus reality. Or they're going to talk about there are $1 trillion industry, the valuations are huge. Whereas if you see the inference cost, it's like $700,000 per day that OpenAI is kind of having it right now. The main use cases right now are only two: text generation, code generation, which are actually generating the revenue. Everything else is like everyone is playing with it right now. It's a play field. We're going to go through some of the studies of these challenges, case studies. At a high level, I'll go through. Okay, we have all of these plugins that OpenAI has created. So how are they actually interacting with ChatGPT? Are they reliable? In this study, what they do is they have taken two plugins, Wolfram Alpha, which is like, it has all the algorithms for mathematical computation, and then Code Interpreter. So these two, so they have checked the interaction with GPT-4 for 105 questions, and if you see the accuracy scoring, it's pretty much okay. Like out of 32 questions, how many are accurate? Like it's not that huge of a difference with these plugins. The conclusion was the interactions are pretty random. Sometimes it fails to formulate the problem in the format required for these plugins. Sometimes it does the calculations by itself without giving anything to the plugins. Sometimes any nonsensical errors, it is unable to identify. So GPT-4 has a lot of challenges. There's a lot of room for improvement in this. So that's one aspect. Now, the drift. If you see, the blue bars are for June, for March. So they're trying to compare the behavior of these GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 for the months of March and June 2023. So when they see that, you see the accuracy scoring in all of those bar graphs. So wherever you see a tilt between blue and red, that means there is a dip in the accuracy. So as and when they are upgrading these models, we don't know what is impacting. Is it impacting the scoring, or is it impacting other functionality? They're not quite open or transparent about what is changing, right? So it's very unclear what is going to change. And in this case, if you see, the code generation aspect, it dipped considerably in terms of the accuracy scoring. So this drift is something which we need to be careful about. Like, if you are trying to reproduce the same kind of result, this is not the case. Like, the output keeps on changing. There won't be any consistent output. There would be degradation of the performance. In some instances, in most of the instances, it was pretty flat. The next aspect is the context window. If you see, bigger context windows are good. Like, if you see, Anthropic released as Claude 2 with 100,000 tokens. That's a huge context window. Well, you can actually input whole of small-size book as a context into the model. However, in this study, what they have found was simple question answering or key value retrieval for that context, for that huge size context. They have tested it. So what happened was, at the very start and at the very end, the question answers were fairly accurate, whereas the performance completely degrades in the middle of the context. So if you see those graphs, the accuracy scoring dips in the middle, whereas at the start and at the end, you can see the accuracy scoring like, fairly high. So that is another challenge as well. So data security and privacy. So this, you've seen Samsung's data leak, right? So what happened here is some kind of proprietary code base was ingested into ChatGPT by one of their employees. Now they started talking, oh, there is a data leak. What kind of data leak we are talking here? Well, the data is encrypted while it is being transmitted from that employee's computer to ChatGPT or OpenAI. And if they happen to store it, they are encrypting it as well. So what is the point of data leak they're talking? Data in use. So data in transit and data at rest, they're already encrypted. What about data in use? It's not encrypted. So that's the data leak they're talking about, right? If you see the second quadrant there, you have a physical machine, you have hypervisor, you have OS. Everything is exposed. It's not encrypted. So when the data is transmitted in between the CPU, memory, from CPU to GPU, it's completely open. The person who has root access, person with compromised OS access, they will be able to see that. That's one aspect of it. Now, how do we deal with this? There's something called confidential computing, where everything is encrypted while it is being transmitted in between CPU, GPU, or memory, you name it. So how does it happen? If you're sitting in front of that enclave, you give that context. The whole context is also encrypted. If you see that, the whole context is encrypted. And then you pose a question, when was this person's physical done? Even that one is also encrypted. The response is also encrypted. When it comes out as an answer, June 26, 2023, that is a decryption that happens. Everything happens on that enclave. When the data is transmitted between CPU, memory, and all, it's all encrypted. So that's where this is going. Then what happens in that case is people need not worry about data leaks, hopefully. The next aspect is, okay, that doesn't end there. When Samsung's data leak doesn't end with encryption, once the model learns it, it cannot unlearn it. It's sitting there in the form of weights and biases. So if you can give a tricky prompt, you can always get it back. That is another aspect. So if you see these adversarial attacks, in this study, it's almost like a jailbreak. Have you ever seen jailbreaking your iPhone? Something similar to that. So like how to make a bomb, how to destroy humanity. So if you give those questions and then put in some kind of suffix with weird prompting, it will give you your answer, in the sense like whatever the answer you're looking for. So the problem is this ChatGPT is trained on open internet, everything, whatever it can absorb. So how they did that, they used two different algorithms, GCC and UPO, and they trained it on open source models like Llama 2, and then they generated these suffixes, so these adversarial prompts. So once those adversarial prompts are there, you can extract anything, including Samsung's, whatever we talked about, the proprietary code base as well, along with these toxic questions and answers. So what do we need to do? Again, if you see the percentage, or if you see the scoring, attack success rate, Claude 2 comes out on the top. Only 2% they were successful. The reason being, the Claude 2 was trained on UN Declaration of Human Rights, terms of use on digital platforms, which makes it stronger on these kind of toxic attacks. So obviously, there's more to do with respect to the fine-tuning of the LLMs. They have to keep on attacking with these models and then try to see what is the correct answer, so they have to train it on top of it. So yeah, this is about adversarial attacks. We have to wait and see how much progress as an industry that they're going to make. The next one is regulations and implications. You might have seen EU AI Act. So in this study, what they have done was they have taken 10 different major foundation models, and then they have taken 12 different EU AI Act requirements, and they have scored them based on 0 to 4. And you have seen there's Bloom there, there's GPT-4. Bloom and GPT-Neo, they both scored, Bloom scores pretty high, 36 out of 48. But all other models, they're pretty low in terms of copyrighted material, in terms of the disclosures. So main thing is, it's unclear on the liability of copyrighted data, because this ChatGPT was trained on all of the open internet, so we don't know which one is copyrighted, which one is not. And also inadequate disclosures, that is also another main aspect that we can see broadly. So broadly, we can see the transparency is not there in terms of everything, what they trained on, when are they deploying the changes, if they're deploying any changes, what kind of changes or upgrades they have done to their models. Now, you might have also seen, I think 2 days ago, the White House came out with this executive order. But again, I just took some of the provisions, not all of them, because a little bit political as well, so I removed all of those. But if you see, they're looking at the safety tests. So what kind of safety tests were performed? Can you disclose them? And also, they're also looking at the red teaming. Red teaming is nothing but some of these ethical hackers are trying to pose as bad actors and then try to check the security and safety of this digital entity. So that is one aspect where they have to share what kind of testing they have done with this red teaming. And also, in terms of science and biology-related projects, what kind of safety measures they have taken. Now, all of the AI-generated content should be watermarked, which is also a good thing. And then the cyber challenge, they're going to get this cybersecurity program, strengthen this program with some kind of challenge framework that they are going to come up. Also, in terms of the data policies, what kind of data they're training on? Is it a complete open internet, or is this some kind of curated data? So that is also there. So it's still very shallow. It needs to go a little bit deep, but it's a good start, at least. The next one is with respect to clash of vested interests. So there are companies who are in FOMO mode, fear of missing out. So they want to go, like Bloomberg, Morgan Stanley, they're just jumping on it. But there are other companies where, we'll just wait and watch and see. It could be another bubble. Well, is it actually artificial intelligence or intelligence augmentation? Primarily the second one. But again, there are people who think that it could become AGI. You can see think slow and act fast versus move fast and break things. you're going to see a lot of things move fast and break things. That's what we have seen all of these companies are trying to do right now. They just can't wait. Now, in terms of the creativity versus accuracy, for financial services, we need more accuracy, less of creativity. But for digital marketing, especially for this forum, we need more creativity, right? So again, it depends on like in a use case where it goes. More and more these open source and closed source models are coming in. The competitive advantage is in the form of curated data, because everything is coming out as an open source, so there won't be any competitive advantage on the model itself. The entity or company which has this curated data may survive. Again, open source versus closed source, typical code generation versus malicious code generation, that is also there. The last one is indemnity versus copyright infringement. So this is important again for marketing. Have anyone worked with Adobe Firefly? That's another language model, okay, good. So what they have given was like, they provide this indemnity for anything that you do with that model. So how do they do it? Because what they claim is they have trained it on curated data, which is not, either copyrights were expired or doesn't have any copyright related data. So they're able to provide this indemnity for anyone who is using their software. So that is something also you have to take into account while using any of these applications or software modules. I think that's it. We have 9 minutes, which is good. Thank you. That's my LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect. Any questions? Okay, no question. I know it's a little bit in-depth in some instances, all the case studies, but again, yeah, that's where it is going.
I have a question for you. So when we're thinking about, and I'll come up here next to you so I can get on video. I like being on video. Thanks for that. So when we're thinking about security, and you mentioned that great example a minute ago of how you were questioning how the data got into ChatGPT, right? And that wasn't necessarily a data leak. That was coming from an employee that used the tool. Mm-hmm. So how do we, as marketing professionals, keep that on lockdown? How do we set a policy internally so that people know when and when not to be using these tools and what data to be punching into them?
Yeah, so there are, I showed you one slide where there is in the observability layer of the tech stack, there are a lot of companies that came up with these tools to put the guardrails. If any data which is proprietary, if they're inadvertently trying to ingest, what those tools will do is they'll immediately identify and say like, hey, we cannot send this data to ChatGPT. So they put some kind of guardrails there. There are so many tools there in the observability layer that have come up. So even before as soon as he enters that prompt, there will be layers sitting and observing it, looking at it and saying, hey, is this data proprietary? Is this data public? And then it will allow them to send that data. So that is extensively a developing area right now in terms of that.
And is that something that's responsible for the company, or are we waiting on, as you mentioned, legislation and directive from the government on stuff like this?
It's both actually, but again, with the way things are going so fast, with these companies, they are less inclined for the safety and security. Even though OpenAI introduced this new red team, and then they say like they're doing everything for safety and security, but both should come together. In the recent discussion in the White House, all the companies came up and said, yes, we are ready to work with you on that. But it's both. The companies have to take that initiative and provide those guardrails, and at the same time, legislation has to be there in terms of enforcing that level of oversight.
Yeah, I think, maybe speaking for myself, but that's one of the biggest worries I think we have as an industry. Got a question down here in front. The mic is coming.
Kind of dovetailing on that, any recommendations of where we can look to find out what these policies should even look like? I don't know where to even start with saying, here are some of the parameters, of what you need to be followed. So any templates or thought leaders in that spot that you can say, hey,
So the first best thing is, this thing, right? The software is manufactured in the US. hardware is in China, regulations come from Europe, right? So check on the EU AI Act. There is a draft version already in the website.
I'm sorry, where was that?
European Union AI Act, EU AI Act.
EAI CAT, okay.
So that is going to come up. They're saying they're going to go with, get the approvals from all the member countries by December, but I don't think it will finish by December. But hopefully, there is a draft version sitting there in terms of all of these safety, security, disclosures, and all the regulations. I think that would become a blueprint for everyone. But again, you've seen this AI Bill of Rights from the White House, where they are also trying to front run that. But again, at the end of the day, I feel more to do with Europe will come first with some kind of regulations, and everyone will follow. Same like GDPR.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Any other questions for Suresh? Got time for maybe one or two more. This AI stuff is definitely like an overload. I know that there's a lot that's happening within the industry that we need to keep track of. It's new and it's exciting, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing that intel. Any other final questions? Okay, let's give Suresh a round of applause. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay.